Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Jaya Radha Giridhare, Radha Giridhare Chirate. Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Jaya Prabhupada, Chila Prabhupada. Oh Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaur Haribo, 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 Nitai Gaur Haribo. Ram Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivrajakacarya Nityalila Pravishta Amatishta Atishta Tarashata Shishamat A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON Samstapakacharya Srila Prabhupada Ki BBT Samstapakacharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai Jai Sitanath Nitai Gaura Premanandi. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the assembled devotees, Hare Krishna. All glories to the lotus feet of Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Shri Ram Swami Namne. Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhakti Vedanta Swami Namne. Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pascharya Shatarini. Okay, so we'll begin by reading from Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita. There's a little sticker saying start here. So I'm going to go with that. This is page number 38. That sounds a bit... This is page number 38. Which I'm doubtful is the actual place that we're at, because I'm sure we've read past page number 38 by now. But I'm going to go with it because I don't know what else to do. Is that correct? Sticker. Go with a sticker. Okay. All right. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta continued. Whether one power or another ruled was a temporary situation, but the eternal reality is Krishna consciousness, and the real self is the spirit soul. No man-made political system, therefore, could actually help humanity. This was the verdict of Vedic scriptures and the line of spiritual masters. Although everyone is an eternal servant of God, when one takes himself to be the temporary body and regards the nation of his birth as worshipable, he comes under illusion. The leaders and followers of the world's political movements, including the movement for Swaraj, were simply cultivating this illusion. Real welfare work, whether individual, social, or political, should help prepare a person for his next life and help him re-establish his eternal relationship with the Supreme. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati had articulated these ideas many times before in his writings. Quote, there has not been, there will not be such benefactors of the highest merit as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and his devotees have been. The offer of other benefits is only a deception. It is rather a great harm. Whereas the benefit done by him and his followers is the truest and greatest eternal benefit. This benefit is not for one particular country causing mischief to another, but it benefits the whole world. This benefit is not for one particular country causing mischief to another, but it benefits the whole universe. The kindness that Sri Chaitanya will not be victim of the evils of the world. As Abai listened attentively to the arguments of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati, he recalled a Bengali poet who had written that even less advanced civilizations like China and Japan were independent, and yet India labored under political oppression. Abai knew well the philosophy of nationalism, which stressed that Indian independence had to come first. An oppressed people was a reality. The British slaughter of innocent citizens was a reality, and independence would benefit people. Spiritual life was a luxury that could be afforded only after independence. In the present times, the cause of national liberation from the British was the only relevant spiritual movement. The people's cause was in itself God. Yet, because Abai had been raised a Vaishnava, he appreciated what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta was saying. Abai had already concluded that this was certainly not just another questionable sadhu, and he perceived the truth in what Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said. This sadhu wasn't concocting his own philosophy, and he wasn't simply proud or belligerent. Even though he spoke in a way that kicked out practically every other philosophy, he was speaking the eternal teachings of the Vedic literature and the sages, and Abai loved to hear it. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta, speaking sometimes in English and sometimes in Bengali, and sometimes quoting the Sanskrit verses of the Bhagavad Gita, spoke of Sri Krishna as the highest Vedic authority. In the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna had declared that a person should give up whatever duty he considers religious and surrender unto him, the personality of Godhead. Sarvadharmam parityaja mamekam sharanam vraja. And the Srimad Bhagavatam confirmed the same thing. Dharma projita kaitavotra paramo nimatsaranam satam. All other forms of religion are impure and should be thrown out, and only Bhagavat Dharma performing one's duties to please the Supreme Lord should remain. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta's cogent, word of the day, was so cogent that anyone who accepted the Shastras would have to accept his conclusion. Jai. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur Mahasaya ki jai. Prabhupada ki jai. Very beautifully written descriptions of Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur's preaching and Srila Prabhupada's enthusiastic reception. And Srila Satsvarupa Das Goswami has also presented Srila Prabhupada's mood. I feel that you're hearing how Srila Prabhupada experienced the situation when you read Srila Prabhupada's Leelamrita. That's how I feel when I read it. So that's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Amazing book that we have presenting Srila Prabhupada's pastimes. So many important points that are made here. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur is making. Krishna consciousness can't wait for any political situation. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta replied in a quiet, deep voice that Krishna consciousness didn't have to wait for a change in Indian politics, nor was it dependent on who ruled. Krishna consciousness was so important, so exclusively important, that it could not wait. Bhaktisiddhanta continued, whether one power or another ruled was a temporary situation, but the eternal reality is Krishna consciousness. No man-made political situation could actually help humanity. Now we're going to go to Srimad Bhagavatam. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, 4th canto. Fourth canto is called The Creation of the Fourth Order. We're reading from chapter 19. Just going to bring the page back. Here we go. Which is chapter 19 is entitled King Prithu's 100 horse sacrifices, and we're reading from text number 39. When I got sent the message to asking if I could do the class, Mataji said read through to 42, which is the end of the chapter. There's a purport in the middle on text number 40. So we'll do a reading. I'll read all the way through 39 through to 42, including the purport, and then come back to text 40 and Srila Prabhupada's purport and comment from there. Okay, so we have text 39 on the board. Please repeat. Maitreya Uvacha Itam Saloka Guruna Samadhishto Vishampatihi Tatacha Kritva Vatsalyam Margonapi Cha Sandade Maitreya uvacha itam saloka guruna samadhishto vishampatihi tata chakritva vatsalyam magunapi chasandate. Maitreya uvacha itam saloka guruna samadhishto vishampatihi tata chakritva vatsalyam magunapi chasandate. Itam saloka guruna samadhishto vishampatihi itam saloka guruna samadhishto vishampatihi tata chakritva vatsalyam magonapi chasandate. Itam saloka guruna samadhishto vishampatihi tata chakritva vatsalyam magonapi chasandate. Itam saloka guruna samadhishto vishampatihi tata chakritva vatsalyam magonapi chasandate. Maitreya uvacha, the great sage Maitreya continued to speak. Itam, thus, Saha, King Prithu, Loka Guruna, by the original teacher of all people, Lord Brahma, Samadhishtaha, being advised, Vishampatihi, the king, master of the people, Tata, in that way, Cha, also, Kritva, having done, Vatsalyam, affection, Makona, with Indra, Api, even, Cha, also, Sandadhe, concluded peace. Translation. The great sage Maitreya continued, when King Prithu was thus advised by the supreme teacher, Lord Brahma, he abandoned his eagerness to perform yajnas and with great affection concluded a peace with King Indra. Text 40. Kritava Brita Snanaya Pritave Puri Karmane Varanta Duste Varada Yetad Partishi Tarpitaha. Translation. After this, Prithu Maharaj took his bath, which is customarily taken after the performance of a yajna, and received the benedictions and due blessings of the demigods, who were very pleased by his glorious activities. Purport. Yajna means Lord Vishnu. For all yajna is meant to please the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Vishnu. Since the demigods automatically become very pleased with the performance of sacrifice, they bestow benediction upon the executors of yajnas. When one pours water on the root of a tree, The branches, trunk, twigs, flowers, and leaves are all satisfied. Similarly, when one gives food to the stomach, all the parts of the body are rejuvenated. In the same way, if one simply satisfies Lord Vishnu by the performance of yajna, one satisfies all the demigods automatically. In turn, the demigods offer their benedictions to such a devotee. A pure devotee, therefore, does not ask benedictions directly on the demigod. His only business is to serve the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Thus, he is never in need of those things supplied by the demigods. Text 41. Vipraha satyashishas tushtaha shradaya labda dakshinaha ashisho yuyuju shraddhar adi rajaya satkritaha. Translation. With great respect, the original king, Prithu, offered all kinds of rewards to the brahmanas present at the sacrifice. Since all these brahmanas were very much satisfied, they gave their heartfelt blessings to the king. Text 42. Tvayahuta mahabaho sarva eva samagataha ujita danamanabhyam pitri deva rishi manavaha. Translation. All the great sages and brahmanas said, Almighty King, by your invitation, all classes of living entities have attended this assembly. They have come from Pitriloka and the heavenly planets. And great sages as well as common men have attended this meeting. Now all of them are very much satisfied by your dealings and your charity towards them. Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 4th canto, 19th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled King Prithu's 100 horse sacrifices. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurmilitam Jena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Panchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindho Vayevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manovishtam Shtapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam O Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Golga Vijay Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Golga Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Okay, so this is the end of this chapter, where the conclusion to King Prithu's endeavor to perform Ashwamedha Yajnas is described. And we've come to the point where Prithu Maharaj has taken on the advice of Lord Brahma, which is to take the humble position, and seeing that Indra was not going to give up, Indra was fixed in his intention of disturbing the yajna due to his pride, and due to his pride. The main quality about Lord Indra that is highlighted is his pride. So due to his pride, he wasn't going to be able to hear. He wasn't going to change his determination. And Lord Brahma, therefore, would you like a seat? Like a chair? Due to his pride, he wasn't going to change his determination. So Lord Brahma said to Prithu Maharaj, the essential message was that you've fulfilled your duty, you've done enough, and he's not going to change. And if he carries on like this, he's just continuing to aggravate the situation. He's already caused enough damage by setting the example of pretending to be a sannyasi and instigating adharma by his behavior. So we just need to draw the line here. You can hear. So the more Krishna conscious person in the situation took the humble position. Very interesting. That's one sort of main point that is there in this Leela, that Prithu took the humble position. He followed the advice of Lord Brahma. Followed the advice of Lord Brahma. So Prithu Maharaj finished. He didn't push it any further. He said, "Okay, that's it. I've done 100. I've done 99, and yeah, I'm following the advice of Lord Brahma, who's described nicely here as how is he described? The supreme teacher, Lord Brahma. So Lord Brahma is the first created being in the creation, and he's the first person in the universe to receive instruction from the Lord, and then he then passes that instruction on. So he's considered the supreme teacher. He's the Loka Guruna, the original teacher of all people. He was the first one to receive transcendental knowledge from Krishna. Therefore, within the material creation, he's the original teacher of all people. Vedic knowledge comes through him. So, receiving the orders of the original teacher, Loka Guru, the supreme teacher, his guru, King Prithu, he acted on that as a Krishna conscious person should do. Should act on the instructions of the spiritual master, and by that, then Krishna is pleased. And that is the business of Krishna consciousness, to please Krishna. Pleasing Krishna is the essence of the endeavor of devotional service. And how do we do that? We do that by pleasing the spiritual master. Krishna is more pleased when we serve his devotees. The devotee who we have the most faith in, generally, Srila Prabhupada says this is purports to Adi Leela, Chaitanya Charitamrita. Prabhupada says the instructor, the devotee who has the most faith in, generally that person becomes the initiating spiritual master. So Guru manifests as Shiksha Guru, of which there can be various types and many, and Diksha Guru, of which there is one. And there is an etiquette between these two aspects of Guru Tattva, Shiksha and Diksha. That etiquette is to be well understood and followed. What is that? That is that when one takes Diksha, one is making a commitment to that Guru, and that Guru is making a commitment to that individual. There's a difference in the level of commitment made. What determines the different categories of Shiksha Guru, the levels of commitment that they make to the person that they're giving instruction to. In Chaitanya Charitamrita, some different categories of Shiksha Guru, such as Dharma Pradakshak, the one who first instructs one on the path. So we can all meditate on a Dharma Pradakshak, a Guru we'll have. And that might have been one person who gave us a book or pointed us in the direction of going to the temple. Somehow over that person who connected us to the path of Krishna consciousness. Very good to meditate on all of our Shiksha Gurus and be grateful for the way in which Krishna, Guru Krishna Prasad. So the Guru is manifestation of the mercy of Krishna. So Krishna's mercy comes into our life through Guru. Guru is not different from Krishna. Yasha Shaksha Bhagavati. How? Well, because Krishna and his internal potency are non-different. It's simultaneously one and different from his potencies. His Sambit Shakti, his cognition's potency, knowledge potency is simultaneously one and different from him. Krishna's cognition, awareness of all things is through his Sambit Shakti. For the living entity, the essence of knowledge is to know that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This knowledge is non-different from Krishna. It's Sambit Shakti, which is simultaneously one and different from Krishna. The function by which Sambit Shakti knowledge is given to an individual living being is Guru. The Guru is therefore non-different from Krishna, in as much as Krishna's Shakti is non-different from him. But this is not to be misunderstood that Guru is Krishna in the sense of Swayam Bhagavan, the original Sarva Karana Karanam, the original cause of all causes, or anything else, or the Leela Purushottam, performer of unlimited pastime. But because Guru hears her words, thoughts, and deeds are all based on transcendental knowledge. Transcendental knowledge is non-different from Krishna. So they represent Krishna. All of Krishna's expansions serve Krishna. Krishna's first expansion is Balaram. Balaram serves Krishna. Krishna is the one Ishvara. And all of his expansions, personal expansions, and Shakti expansions, including the Jiva Shakti, they're all Nitya Krishna Das. They're all serving Krishna in Tattva. They're all revolving around Krishna's pleasure, pleasing Krishna. The Guru is servant of Krishna, always. Prabhupada uses the term same place. This section of Chaitanya Charitamrita, Adi, chapter 1, text 30 through, he's explaining this Vande Gurum Isha Bhaktamisha Avatarakam verse, which is in the first 14 of Chaitanya Charitamrita. Several verses there on Guru Tattva, and amazing purports by Srila Prabhupada explaining the various aspects of Guru Tattva. So, because I've been reading that recently, it's top of mind. So this is Krishna manifests through Guru Krishna Prasad. Krishna manifests as Guru. Guru represents Krishna because he is the embodiment of Sambit Shakti, non-different from Krishna. So in that sense, Krishna is, Prabhupada uses the term Supreme Personality of Servitor Godhead, Sevaka Bhagavan. And Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Swayam Bhagavan. So this Guru Tattva, which is non-different from Krishna, is Krishna in this sense, manifests as Shiksha and Diksha Gurus. And Shiksha Guru manifests in different ways. There's different types of Shiksha Gurus. Dharma Pradakshaka Guru is one. Actually, Prabhupada uses this phrase, anyone who gives instructions based on the either teachings, revelation, of revealed scripture is guru. Anyone who gives instruction based on the teachings of revealed scripture is guru. Because anyone who performs that function of giving transcendental knowledge is acting as guru. Shiksha means instruction. Another type of shiksha guru is the devotee that gives class. There's not much commitment to come and go. Say a few words and then share some understanding and then you go. There's not much commitment to the individuals that you're speaking to. And there's not much commitment from the individuals to the speaker. It's the context. And then there's the shiksha gurus who guide one more in one's spiritual life. They show more commitment by always being there to help, always being there to guide, always being there to discuss, always being there to support one in one's service. There's more commitment. So then the devotee that's receiving that has more commitment to them, and and that love and respect should be there. When we say Gurun, Prabhupada says Gurun, Vande Gurun Isha Bhaktam. Gurun, in this phrase, Gurun, with ending is plural. So generally it's plural, but Diksha Guru is one. So yeah, it's good to meditate on all our Diksha Gurus and be grateful to all of them. All of those people who helped us and continue to help us in spiritual life. They're all gurus. And we should offer respect to all of them. Actually, every Vaishnava is guru. Vaishnava means guru. Why? Because Vaishnava is someone who's trying to serve and please Krishna, trying to act on Krishna's instruction. So they are acting on transcendental knowledge, achar, activities, and prachar. Lord Chaitanya glorified Haridas Thakur. You've got perfect achar and prachar. You do both properly. So you're the namacharya, you're the acharya. You set the example. Your achar is something that everyone else should follow. So Vaishnava means someone who's acting according to Krishna's instruction, someone who's trying to please Krishna. So this is a very broad understanding of Guru Tattva, of Guru. So, because we learn from every devotee. And even, the Diksha Guru, Srila Prabhupada would often say how he sees, I don't know about often, but there's a statement comes to mind, can't quote it exactly, but how Prabhupada sees himself as the servant of his disciples and how he's learning from them. So, so different types of Shiksha Gurus, and we should show respect to them all as Guru. And then Diksha Guru is, Prabhupada says, generally the instructing spiritual master who one has the most faith in becomes one's initiating Guru. Generally, that's my understanding of generally. When he said that was, that's like the general protocol, how it will generally go. You come into the association of devotees, the devotee who gives you the most faith, naturally you gravitate towards that person and are inspired in your Krishna consciousness by that person. And that's the person who you feel you can surrender to. Because that's the point with Diksha Guru. The commitment is more. As Diksha Guru says something, you can't ignore it. The third offense is, what am I right? Is it third offense? Guru Avagya? Blasphemy devotees, criticize those who disobey the orders of the spiritual master. So this is particularly coming into the realm of the initiated disciple and the Diksha Guru. Because the commitment is more. I'm going to surrender to Krishna. I'm going to Krishna's service through this link into cyclic succession. So this is where this is the point. This is the Ikiha Kurunandana. This is the point where I'm going to put what I think to one side and go with that. I'm going to surrender. I've got my will, I've got my intelligence, I've got my ideas, but this is the order of my spiritual master. That's what I'm going to act on. So the etiquette between Shiksha and Diksha is that all Shiksha gurus should align with the should support the disciple in following the instructions of the Diksha guru. You have to know what you have to know the Diksha gurus. If you're a Shiksha guru for a disciple of someone that's initiated, then you know how to support them in line with that Diksha guru's instructions for that disciple. Because that's the how does it, this is all principle, this is my understanding of principle from reading the Prabhupada's purport. How does it work in our movement, where we have, not just in our movement, but in Vaishnava tradition, you have founder Acharya, Adi Guru, or Samstapaka Acharya, the founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada, whose shiksha is the basis for all instruction. Srila Prabhupada is his shiksha is the shiksha that everyone aligns with. And all Diksha Gurus after Srila Prabhupada, his mood, mission, teachings, they form the basis for all of their instructions, everything for future generations of Vaishnavas in Srila Prabhupada's movement, ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, which he founded. So he is the most prominent Shiksha Guru for all of us. We're all reading the same books. We're all receiving the same instructions from his teachings. And so in one sense, we are all one big spiritual family under Srila Prabhupada's instructions. And that Srila Prabhupada's instructions unify us all. So we are always seeing, what does Srila Prabhupada say on this? How does Srila Prabhupada, what does Srila Prabhupada say on this point of our philosophy? So that is overarching Shiksha, which is for all of the Shiksha and Diksha Gurus in our movement. We're all, of course, everyone's an individual. Everyone's always an individual. Always will be an individual. So individuality means subjectivity. It means everyone's got their view, their individuality. So that means that we, well, in one sense, we're all here in the same class, but we're all here in a different class, right? We're all here in our class because we've all got our own prior knowledge, we've all got our own relationship with Krishna, varying levels of our relationship with Krishna, our relationship with Srila Prabhupada, our conditioning, our surrender to Krishna. So it's a variegated situation. And then amongst the variegated situation, there are principles of conduct, which we learn from Shastra, and that determine our modus operandi. They determine our etiquette, they determine our way of functioning. And that comes from Shastra. So here, Brahma as Shiksha Guru is giving an instruction. Prithu Maharaj is understanding this is Krishna's instruction for me. This is Krishna's desire. This is favorable for me now. I am going to do this. So therefore we always need Guru, because how do we know what's favorable for us in our individual unique situation, in our Krishna consciousness now? How do we know? If we want to know what's favorable for our service, if we want to know how to please Krishna, Guru Krishna Prasadi Pai, Krishna will give that knowledge. That comes through Guru. So we need Guru to understand how to serve Krishna, how to please Krishna. And Indra, he's a very interesting example of pride. And he's there in the Shastra for Krishna performs his pastimes for the benefit of his devotees. This is a verse on them. Anugrahaya bhaktanam manusham deham ashritaha. Krishna manifests his eternal human-like form and pastimes and performs his pastimes to show mercy to the devotees. Anugrahaya bhaktanam. So all of Krishna's pastimes are performed to show mercy to his devotees. This is Bhagavatam, quoted in Adi Leela chapter 4. So Indra's example is also, we get to see Indra's example. That's mercy on us. We get to learn from his example. He in this pastime, he couldn't hear. So Prithu, he took the humble position, followed the advice of Lord Brahma, and then Indra was pacified and went back to his heavenly abode. In other pastimes, then other things also happen of a similar nature of Indra. So in the Govardhan Leela, then Krishna punished Indra. Indra acted out of pride again there, and Indra sent rain, and he caused lots of offenses because he put all of the Krishna's eternal associates into distress by his activities, and he destroyed Vrindavan Dham with torrents of rain. This is worse than sinful activity because it's Vaishnava aparad. It's heinous. And eventually he realized, and then he came to, he realized that, this is a Supreme Lord. So it was fear which motivated his surrender to Krishna. And he gave up and stopped. And then he came to Govardhan and prayed to Krishna and glorified Krishna. And Krishna smiled, and Indra was pacified. Sanatana Goswami explains in that actually, and then Krishna sent him back to the heavenly planets. But he didn't get Krishna's mercy. He didn't get Krishna's mercy. And Krishna sending him back to his place in the heavenly planets was also a sign that Krishna didn't give him his mercy. Because he was there in Vrindavan. He had darshan of Krishna. But he still carried pride in his heart. And he was not able to actually stay in Vrindavan. He wasn't allowed to associate even with Krishna's associates in Vrindavan. And his being sent back to the heavenly planet was a sign that he didn't receive Krishna's mercy. Krishna's real mercy, word used in English. Because his pride was still there. And then the evidence for that it was still there at that time, is that even later in Krishna's human-like Leela, Manusham Dehamashitaha, in his human-like Leela later, when, as we heard from Deva Rita Maharaj in class was last weekend, that that when Krishna went to take the Parijat tree from the heavenly planet, Indra was still disturbed by that. So his pride was still there, and what is the benefit for us hearing that? Well, for me, when I hear these things, it makes me think, oh, Krishna, I really need to align my desires with you. I need to recognize my pride and desire to not be pushed around and allow that to be what moves me forward in my life. That my desire to please you, which is to please your devotees, please the spiritual master, be my motive, not desire for power, position, or anything else. Let it just be to please you. And this is the point of yajna. This is the point of performing yajna, sacrifice, is to actually awaken love for Krishna. Prabhupada expresses this very beautifully in Yajna Yatra, verse 312 in Bhagavad Gita. In his purport, he says, I'll read this. Oh. Okay, the devotees of the Supreme Lord, or the persons who are in Krishna consciousness, are called santas, and they are always in love with the Supreme Lord, as it is described in Brahma Samhita, Premanjana Charita Bhakti Vilochanena, Santa Sadeva Hridayeshu Vilokayanti. The santas, being always in a compact of love with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the giver of all pleasures, or Mukunda, the giver of liberation, or Krishna, the all-attractive person, cannot accept anything without first offering it to the Supreme Person. Oh, that's, excuse me, that's not the verse I was thinking of. It's text 9, Yajna Yatra. Yeah, here he says, nothing should be performed for sense gratification, but everything should be done for the satisfaction of Krishna. So this is yajna, to sacrifice for Krishna's pleasure. To sacrifice for Krishna's pleasure. So the purpose of yajna is this practice will not only save one from the reactions of work, but also gradually elevate one to the transcendental loving service of the Lord, which alone can raise one to the kingdom of God. So it's the transcendental loving service of the Lord alone which raises us to the kingdom of God, to the spiritual world, nothing else. And yajna is there to gradually elevate us, to purify the heart, to bring us to this point of transcendental loving service to the Lord. So this is the purpose of yajna, is to come to transcendental loving service of the Lord. Prabhupada, this is a qualified form of devotional service, transcendental loving service. Prabhupada uses this term over and over again to describe prema bhakti, the love of the residents of Vrindavan particularly, transcendental loving service. So yajna is meant to bring us to that. But Indra was there in Vrindavan before Krishna, but Sanatana Goswami says, because he wasn't qualified to be there, he was sent back. He was sent back to the heavenly planet. He wasn't qualified to associate with Krishna's associates, wasn't qualified to stay in the Dharma. He had to go. And that was because this pride was still being cultivated in the heart. Raghunath Das Goswami says, Sada Dambam Hitva, says you have to give up this pride. And then Sada Dambam Hitva Kuru Apurva Matitaram Ai Swanta Pratas. He says that you have to, first of all, put aside pride and then cultivate attachment to Guru, to Krishna, to the name, the holy name, to the mantra given by Krishna, to all of the Vaishnavas, the holy Dham, to Radha and Krishna. This is the point. So we have to stay on the point. So Prithu knew that. Prithu was able to understand this yajna is not the point. The point is the transcendental love and service of Krishna. And I'm only going to be able to achieve that by pleasing Guru, by pleasing Supreme Lord. So therefore, let me stop here and follow the instructions of my spiritual master. I'm going to stop there. Thank you for your kind attention. Hare Krishna. Does anyone have any comments? Yeah. Well, I'm going to just reflect it back to you. How do you do it? Thank you for your comment and for your unpacking and expressing. And how do you? How do you? Mm. Mm. Yeah. I'm going to comment something that I think. Yeah. Okay, Baru. I think hearing for a very long time. Yeah. That's right. It's cumulative bhakti. I think of something that Banu Swami Maharaj said, not last time, but not last time he was here, time before. He was talking about how bhakti is accumulative, how it accumulates. He said how bhakti is the combination of the Lord's internal potencies, leisure potency and knowledge potency makes bhakti, and that as one engages in bhakti, it accumulates, builds up. So when you said hearing for a very long time, bhakti as a primary process of hearing, that's what came to my mind. That as we engage in bhakti, it accumulates, and our Krishna consciousness develops. I asked Devamrita Maharaj last weekend, how is it that Indra, because Indra seems a bit stuck. I don't know when this Leela happens. Like, I think off the top of my head, I don't know. I'd probably find out. Prior to Krishna's advent, some previous Chatur Yuga. And there's different Indras. Indra's post, changes. The person in the post changes. But it seems to always have this stigma associated to it, which it's a highly controlling. You've got a lot of power, a lot of control. You can display a lot of control and use a lot of power. So it's very bewildering. Naturally, one going to get influenced by thinking oneself to be something that comes with the role. It's just the role, nothing actually to do with the jiva. Just the role has that with it, and you identify with the role. So if you identify with the role, then you get caught up in it. So pride is always sort of stuck on that role of Indra. But then he said, well, he goes from where he is up to Brahma, with Brahma at the end of annihilation towards that time. And then he goes from there, Siddhaloka, and then they get time, and then they return back home to Godhead. So it's like the long road. So they get the time. So in time, he will, that's what I understood, because he couldn't hear directly, he couldn't act on it then because of pride. So time does its thing. And then the other thing Prabhupada says, 10th canto comes to mind, 9th chapter. Prabhupada talks about two processes of purification. One of them is sadhana, the other is suffering. Prabhupada says suffering is the secondary process of purification. Suffering is the secondary process of purification. So it's like, sometimes Krishna wants more than time allows. Sometimes Krishna, this is my thoughts, Krishna sometimes gives suffering to devotees, speed things up a bit, especially towards the end. See that in lives of devotees, they seem to go through externally what looks like a very, but internally their relationship with Krishna can blossom very quickly. So there may be some thing that Krishna, some dues that Krishna, to bring them back quickly. So where there might have been sincere sadhaka, just not enough time, somehow or other by Krishna's arrangements, so he makes arrangements, so secondary process, suffering, seemingly, could be not necessarily such a good sadhaka, and didn't really make use of time properly. And Krishna may use secondary process. Could be a lot of things. Could be, these are just my thoughts. Could be pride stopping one from getting on with the real work, but then suffering secondary process. But Mudita Maharaj is, saying that basically over time he'll get there. How? Then there's two ways: sadhana, secondary, all the secondary. So it accumulates over time. Yeah. 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 Yeah, I mean, it's one motivation for doing sadhana. If we don't have attraction to Krishna, then fear. Well, if we're not going to do bhakti out of attraction to Krishna, because attraction to Krishna hasn't attracted us, we're not attracted, then fear is, if fear gets the thing moving along, then, that's good. Better fear or love, better to do it out of love. More efficacy when it's motivated by love. Yeah, like in 13th chapter, 10th canto Bhagavatam, I was going to read this and I didn't because I sort of forgot the context of why I was going to read it. Because it's just so nice, I'm just going to read it anyway. I don't really not really going to worry too much about the context. I'm just going to read it because it's total nectar. Krishna is, that's the context. Krishna is Yagya. Prabhupada says in this purport that we just read. Krishna is Yagya, right? So I did a search in database. Yagya, there's all these things that come up. One of them is Yagya book. Krishna is Krishna. So this is Srila Prabhupada's purport, 10th canto, 13th chapter, text 11. Lord Brahma has come after. Lord Brahma, he doesn't suffer from the pride. He gets bewildered by Indra. He gets bewildered by seeing Krishna in Vrindavan, but he gets mercy. He responds differently. Indra saw Krishna in Vrindavan. He didn't get mercy. He didn't get attracted to Braj Bhakti. He didn't get attracted to Krishna in a particular rasa. He didn't get to stay in the Dham. He didn't get anything. He just got sent back to the heavenly planets, basically. Brahma got a totally different experience. Brahma got this. Krishna is Yagya Bhuk. That is, he eats only offerings of Yagya. But to exhibit his childhood pastimes, he now sat with his flute tucked between his waist and his tight cloth on his right side, and with his horn bugle and cow driving stick on his left, holding in his hand a very nice preparation of yogurt and rice with pieces of suitable fruit between his fingers. He sat like the whirl of a lotus flower, looking toward all his friends, personally joking with them and creating jubilant laughter among them as he ate. At that time, the denizens of heaven were watching, struck with wonder at how the personality of Godhead, who eats only yagya, was now eating with his friends in the forest. So this is the purpose of yagya, is to come to transcendental loving service, Prabhupada says in Bhagavad Gita. Here, the denizens of heaven are seeing all of this in Krishna. Prabhupada said, purport, when Krishna was eating with his cowherd boyfriends, a certain bumblebee came there to take part in the eating. Thus Krishna joked, why have you come to disturb my Brahmana friend, Madhu Mangal? You want to kill a Brahmana? That is not good. All the boys would laugh and enjoy, speaking such joking words while eating. Thus the inhabitants of the higher planets were astonished at how the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who only eats when yagya is offered, is now eating like an ordinary child with his friends in the forest. So this beautiful purport and text, it highlights how, from the demigod's perspective, they're thinking in terms of yajna and, it's kind of all fear-based. But here's the real deal. Here's Krishna, actual Krishna, joking with his friends about bumblebees coming to bite them, and how joking with the bumblebee that you've come to kill a brahmana. There's no consideration of fear. It's fun, and that's Krishna. When you hear about Krishna, and you get attracted to Krishna, then you want to serve Krishna out of that. That's the Supreme Personality of Godhead that I want to serve. That's the Supreme Personality who I like. That's the Supreme Personality. That's why I'm going to go and chant my japa. That's why I'm going to go and do service. That's why I'm going to do everything to please that person. So that's what we want, is to be elevated to a loving service of the Lord. So that motivation is there, better than fear or anything else. Yeah. Master G, you had a question? Nothing. Habit, the conditioned soul. But notice that Krishna was smiling when Indra came, even when Krishna's still kind. Krishna's always merciful. There's no inauspiciousness in Krishna consciousness ultimately. Yeah, it's a very nice point that is made there about, Krishna is still smiling because Krishna is all good and all loving and all kind at all times, and there's nothing else in him. That's all he is, always, because that's what he is. So, by habit, by conditioned nature, we as conditioned souls don't make best use of things, of opportunity. That's our conditioned nature. So then, the only good thing about that is that it can make us, if we are reflective on that, we'll suffer. That's my experience, right? We do that, and then we suffer, and we experience our, it becomes a catalyst for humility. And then by cultivating humility, by recognizing our own shortcomings, then we have access to hearing. And Krishna's kindness is always there. So devotee is never down, in one sense. It's always humility and a sense of lamentation and separation from Krishna, and separation from where I want to be in the process of Krishna consciousness, in separation from an improved me that I would aspire for, is all favorable for bhakti. All of those moods are favorable for Kirtanya Sudahari. So, kind of related to the same point that Jayashree would make, that in time, So then, good association, regular sadhana, all of these things strengthen our bhakti so that we can take opportunities when they come, not miss them. But yeah, we look back and think. So, but even that regret is also favorable, because it's also this catalyst for humility, and becomes a catalyst for taking shelter of Krishna with more affection and with more feeling. So when our shortcomings become a catalyst for humility, then they're also good. So in one sense, it's all good. This is the all auspicious nature of bhakti and the all auspicious nature of Krishna. Therefore, we cultivate favorable devotional service, positive. Right, finish there. Shri Prabhupada ki jai. Go Hari Bol.